What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and I'm going to be coming at you with somewhat of a new type of video. Before I get into that, sorry for delaying on other things that weren't so coronavirus related. It's just, the stories were coming out so quickly, and I felt like I wanted to get my thoughts out there on so many of them. Yeah, it just, like, I could not get my videos out there fast enough, though, for how much the situation kept changing and new stories and things like that kept coming out. So here's the thing, like, I've done top 10 countdown video things related to music before, and even specifically related to particular bands and their music collections and things like that. The thing is, some of these bands are still releasing new music even after I made those videos. So rather than try and redo those time after time after time whenever a new album from these bands is released, I'm going to take a slightly different approach and just do a top 5 for the newest album, or the newer albums that have been released since said countdown videos from before. So in this case, I'm going to be focusing specifically on the band Disturbed and their kind of new-ish album Evolution. And first off, okay, a little bit of a disclaimer. Disturbed is not a band I recommend for all age listening. I'm going to be focusing on their album Evolution, which, okay, before I get into what I'm considering to be my top 5 songs from this, I'm going to skip past the somewhat obvious inclusion of, their cover of The Sound of Silence, because first off, it's not an original song of theirs, and second, it's just too freaking obvious. I should probably stop trying to explain what I'm doing here, because otherwise this is pretty much like one of my top 10 videos, but it's only top 5 from one specific album. So anyway, let's get right to it. Top 5 favorite songs from Disturbed's album Evolution. Alright, so at number 5, we have the song Savior of Nothing, which I'm not entirely sure why Disturbed decided to spell it with the U like they're British or something, but in any case, it's kind of an example of the broader idea of what they're going for with this album. There's a lot of like socio-political commentary in this, which isn't exactly new for Disturbed, but it is focused more specifically on like recent things. This song in particular is, at least it hits me as a commentary on like internet arguments and just how riled up people seem to get online over even the smallest little things at times. Really, I mean, the song's okay otherwise. I think it's just kind of the message behind it that, maybe we kind of need to just chill a little bit, or maybe realize that there are things from people's past that kind of feed their desire to argue over certain matters on the internet today. So, at number 4, we've got a very similar themed song, but In Another Time is, I think, musically, it's done a little bit better, or at least I like it a little bit more. It's kind of more dynamic between verses and chorus and things like that. But also, I think it's maybe a little bit more positively put as well. It's kind of like a, go live your life sort of thing. It talks about how people spend so much time just, watching others online living their lives, and suggesting that, maybe we should get out there and live our own lives instead. Also, I'm just a little bit of a sucker for really interesting phrasing and lyrics and stuff like that. And I couldn't help but point out the simple phrase, electric zombie. Like, it brings an amusing picture to mind, but like, how, to the same effect, how true is that sometimes? Like, you see people just constantly glued to their phones or computers or whatever, that it seems like they're not even paying attention at all to life around them. So, again, it just kind of feeds back into this idea of, hey, maybe spend a little less time on the screen and maybe a little more time actually living your life.
We're just not able to survive. This venom's killing us, and we won't make it out alive.
All right. At number 3, we have the song This Venom, which I felt like I needed to look it up to see whether or not this was on, like, the Venom movie soundtrack, and it's not. It seemed like it could be. But in any case, again, instrumentally kind of more varied, so I appreciate that. It's also got a pretty decent guitar solo in there. As far as a theme or a message behind this, I think it kind of is still somewhat related to the whole, internet arguing, or even more, or even broader societal kind of like bickering that we've gotten into in recent years, where it's just, we've gotten so focused on trying to bring each other down or talk about how, we're right and, other people need to just shut up and pay attention and do what we say. The way that this has sort of infected our discussions is where the whole idea of it being Venom comes from. And, I think, again, it's sort of suggesting that, hey, maybe we can kind of tone this down a little bit. Let's maybe be a little more realistic and maybe not so hateful to each other.
Well, aren't you ready now? From the revolution for too long, your power has been taken away. It's been taken away. Does your heart feel heavy now? Seek for the solution. Take those mental shackles off and throw them away. You gotta get them out of your mind.
Okay, so at number 2, we have Are You Ready, which I think is the first track on this album. And it's a little bit more, I don't know if upbeat is quite the right word, but it's a little more like, a rockin' out kind of song in a sense. And this is where we kind of get into a more typical Disturbed song. Like, one of the things Disturbed is kind of known for is having almost a revolution, kind of protest the system almost sort of vibe to some of their songs when they do have political commentary, especially. And it's more of like a, hey, let's rise up and change things. Almost don't let the world and life get you down sort of vibe slightly. But again, with more of that, like, okay, let's rise up and protest this, almost harkening back to like 10,000 Fists and stuff like that. But yeah, in any case, I also think it's, you know, pretty good musically, and yeah, could have done with a few less times repeating the phrase "get up" throughout the song. But it seems like it was almost designed more so for concerts rather than the actual album itself. But in any case, still a solid song.
Once again we hear them calling for war. Doesn't matter what they're fighting for. They light the match and watch the whole world burst into flame. Story's always the same.
Alright, and finally at number 1, we've got No More, which, again, kind of going back to the whole protest the system sort of thought process. Once again, good instrumental dynamics and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of almost where this one stands out a little bit more above Are You Ready? Really, like, kind of the heavier focus on drums in this song seems to differentiate it a bit from really most of the rest of the album. And, you know, having sort of that different sound to it, I think, is what makes me appreciate it more. And if we're talking, you know, themes and messages, I mean, again, the whole protest the system sort of thing. But in this case, it's one that sort of points out what the problem is and gets into somewhat of a solution all in one song. In more specifically, this one kind of gets into like how news media in general, I'm not saying one side specifically or another, but news media in general has gotten very close to just being flat out propaganda in some recent years. And, you know, there are all these things that we're being told, whether or not they're actually true, that our government or other people higher up in society are using to kind of justify their actions that otherwise really aren't kind of necessary. Like, in some cases, we really don't need to be sticking our noses in other countries' affairs, but we keep doing it anyway. And so it's like politicians and news stations will come up with these excuses to justify this stuff. And what this song is saying is, forget it, no more. Let's stop paying attention to this and stop justifying all these actions that really aren't needed. They don't help anyone other than those who are, you know, benefiting in a way from all the wars and the fighting and all that kind of stuff. So I guess that's all I've got for this time around. That was my personal top 5 songs from Disturbed's album Evolution. Again, excluding The Sound of Silence, just because it's not quite an original song of theirs, and it was too obvious of a choice, really. Anyway, so that's it. Let me know what you think down below. What are your favorite songs from this album, or just in general from the band? You know, maybe if they release enough albums in the future, I can compile them into another broader top 10. But until that time, I'm going to be doing videos kind of more like this, where it's, you know, just specifically on one album. Let me know what you think about that format, by the way. Again, down in the comments, all your thoughts down in the comments about this kind of video, other suggestions for anything else you have for me, and your personal favorites from this album or just in general. Anyway, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell to enable notifications when I put new stuff out there on YouTube. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Info on that's down in the description below the video. And once again, leave your comments all the way down under that. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video, whatever that might happen to be. But until then, stay cool, people.